felt like A, his clout, like, you know, how famous he is, that they just didn't mind doing it. And B, the guy's been known for, like, you know, he's rich as hell. He was
Hmm.
the biggest star of the 90s because of Seinfeld. That, like, he probably paid him out of his own pocket. Like, he was just like, hey, man, thanks for coming out here for a
Exactly.
day. Here's 10
It
grand.
has that Adam Sandler vibe to it, where it's like I'm
It,
hanging
it,
out with all my
it
friends.
really, that's a great comparison, actually. It really did feel like those Adam Sandler movies where cameos are just happening one after another and they're just not stopping. Like, I mean, but for me, I think it's even worse here because it's just like they just keep popping up for no reason. And it's just like, my God, like there is no stopping this. With an Adam Sandler movie, it's like, okay, they got Al Pacino and like one other person. This, it's like, I kept saying, like, no shit, like they're in this movie too. Like, not in a good way, but in a bad way. Like, because it's just like, man, how many more people are you gonna cram into this fucking thing?
This style of comedy, we compared the plot to Air, to Barbie, and this is honestly trying to be really one for one. This is trying to be the Weird Al Yankovic
Yeah,
parody biography, which is a parody of those types of music biography movies, and that was pretty damn solid. Uh, if I were to watch it again, I probably wouldn't laugh as much, but there were some really good
yeah.
moments, and I like where it ended. It got just absolutely balls to the wall, insane, which really good. And Daniel Radcliffe was going on all the
Yeah,
cylinders on that, and that was absolutely
and I,
great.
I think
But
I think that's
yeah,
what helps that kind of movie too, is the fact that everybody who's in that movie is playing their character to the max. Like Daniel Radcliffe is playing Weird Al Yankovic, Weird Al Yankovic, and I mean, he is selling it. I mean, everybody that pops up in that film, from Jack Black as a record producer, and like, you know, he just like he does the most cliche like record producer stuff, but he does it on purpose, and he just knows how to perfectly play it. I mean, like everybody in that movie for me, I thought did it. Like whoever played Madonna, I forgot who it was, but she killed it too. Um,
I don't. And here's the thing, though. It's like the cast of Unfrosted is they're not. I don't think they were necessarily phoning it in. I think everyone was doing an all right job at the very least. Even for their smaller runtimes, Jerry Seinfeld was probably the weakest person here. But again, that's probably just because he's 70 and he has to play like a 40-year-old guy.
yeah,
But regardless of that, even if he was like, okay, sure. I think the problem here is like I don't know what you call it, like the craft. Look at like a movie like Airplane,
yeah.
or did you ever watch Top Secret, which was made by the same people, starring Val
No,
Kilmer?
I want to though. I've seen clips
That's
of that movie. The
that's one of
shootout
my
in the
favorite.
cabin is hilarious. I've seen
That's one of
that.
my favorite comedy movies ever. That is like Looney Tunes logic for so many jokes.
Yes.
It is a Looney Tunes movie, just straight up. And so was Airplane. And Unfrosted is actually trying, it's actually kind of in that bin as well.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it doesn't quite hit as much. And I think it's the lack of deadpan.
Yes,
I
there's
really
that.
think I think it's that. So think back to Airplane for you, right? Because you what I, I'm trying to think when the last time I've seen Airplane, but I feel like, especially with Leslie Nielsen, right? Leslie Nielsen, the reason why Leslie Nielsen is so good in his comedy roles is because he actually was like a leading man, straight faced action star in the 50s.
Yeah.
And that's what made him so good. Whereas with Unfrosted, they really don't have any of that. It's 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 wacky. It feels like these actors are just hanging out. Like I don't. It's all cameos. It's Jerry Seinfeld and Melissa McCarthy. At no point do I think they're other people.
Yeah.
Jim Gaffigan maybe is playing the most of a character here, just because Edsel Kellogg the third is such a crazy ass character, who like wrote pamphlets on why you should not masturbate. I'm not joking. Uh, but and sure, Hugh Grant as well. But for the most part, I think it has that distinct lack of deadpan that just kind of has an airy feeling to everything else. Even Barbie and Air, they have very serious moments,
Yeah.
comparative to their wackiest ones, and that's what it's earnest. Those movies feel earnest. Unfrosted doesn't have any of that.
I feel like Unfrosted just doesn't also fully commit to what it wants to be in terms of
Yeah,
comedy. Because with every person they bring in, they're bringing in almost like a new style of comedy with them. Like the whole Bill Burr as JFK feels like an entirely different movie, like in terms of its comedy in that scene, than what we get with the Milkmen, and then compared to what we get with the guy from Reno 911, who is basically playing a German ex-Nazi, and the guy that plays Chef Boyardee, like their whole plot line. I mean, like that is like it's just like man, that straight up. I'm not even kidding. That plot line feels like I would see that in like all that. Like that would be like something that like something would happen on like those
This
next.
some of these asides do have like some SNL
Yeah,
feels to them, and that's a more of a derogatory term
yeah. They
than
really
anything.
do. Like Hugh Grant was probably the character that when they kept cutting back to was the storyline I looked forward to the most because I thought he was keeping he was probably making me chuckle the most or laugh. And honestly, I just thought like the whole idea of like him being like a thespian actor as Tony the Tiger was kind of funny. But even where they go with that plot line, it gets ridiculous to where they're basically recreating the DC insurrection, but with mascots, serial mascots, that is. And it was like, I get what you're doing here, but like it's going on way too long now. Like they spent
Also, it sucks because it's like you're you're pitting striking workers against the upper management, and the upper management are the good guys in this scenario. So that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. Which we will. That's whatever, but we'll touch that in our second story. But
yeah.
anyway, for the most part, there's really not much to bite on here. It's as soon as that the first like 5 to 10 minutes flashed for me, I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
is the style of
No,
movie we're gonna
it
have.
really is
And
that.
it really left a it started with a bad taste in my mouth, and it ended with that same taste. I'm
It,
like, yep, this checks out.
it literally like within that first 10 minutes, I funny enough too. We had storms here last night in Illinois and everything, and my power
Yeah.
went out 10 minutes into the movie, and it was like almost like Mother Nature telling me like, "Man, you sure you want to watch this? Are you sure?" Because like yeah, by that 10 minute mark, I was like, I know
Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, it is Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening. It is good to be back after a week's sabbatical. Went to the beautiful state of Ohio with my girlfriend. Went to Cleveland, back and better than ever, though. Thanks to these guys, though, for holding down the show last week. Did a very nice job. And this tackling Unfrosted, a movie that I did watch despite not reviewing on this show. I had to suffer through that. I told you guys like a couple of days before, or I think the day before, we hadn't even seen Unfrosted yet, but I told you guys it could have been worse. I could have made you review Tarot because that thing sucked. That thing sucked. That thing was good for one thing, which is right now being atop my worst list of 2024, excuse me. That is the only thing that movie was good for. That thing sucked.
We could have reviewed The Fall Guy.
Yeah, we really could have. And you know what? I'm not going to lie, seeing that movie last weekend, I was like, we probably should have reviewed this because this was a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I feel like every year we get one like stellar blockbuster, and that really feels like the one this year. Not perfect, not I wouldn't say it's as good as like Top Gun Maverick. I wouldn't say it's as good as Mad Max Fury Road. Who knows? Maybe Furiosa will be that one, and I was premature on the Fall Guy. Could very well be. But
you could say Fall Guy was a surprise of the summer.
It was.
It looked good from the start. Like I was like, oh, that looks like fun. But like I've heard like so many people say, no, it's like actually better than expected.
The only thing about the Fall Guy, and this is not a criticism I levied against it, I gave the thing 3.5 stars. I didn't levy this criticism against it, but they play that they play that Kiss song. They play that. No, they play that a lot, and I didn't really have a problem with that, even though they played like 8 different versions of it. I really wanted though, and especially after seeing those trailers so much, I was like, they could have found room for any way you want it in here. Like they had that song in the trailer so much in Any Way You Want It, and like I don't know if they didn't want to give away I Was Made for Loving You being the song, but like I was just like I kept waiting for Journey to pop up there. I really wanted to hear Journey watching that movie, and it never happened. But at any rate, though, I'm back. Great to be back. Got Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon joining me once again for Sleepless with Steve tonight. We're reviewing a movie I purposely delayed a week because I wanted to talk about it with you guys selfishly. It is probably so far my favorite movie of 2024. I'm going to start by saying that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I like this one quite a bit. So we'll be talking about Late Night with the Devil today. Very excited, was pumped from the first time I saw the trailer. I was set and ready to go for this movie, and it did not disappoint, mostly. We'll get into that. But we will chat Late Night with the Devil today. That's our big review. And then we're also going to be talking about how streaming's beginning to look an awful lot like cable, especially with the news that started breaking last week and has kind of been spiraling now. We've been really keeping our thumb on the streaming wars ever since the radio days here. And it's looking like there's more to talk about even too with Disney Plus, Max, and Hulu bundling now into sort of a package subscription service in a way yet. Not merging, but bundling together. It's beginning to look an awful lot like cable. It's beginning to look a hell of a lot like cable now. And we're going to tackle that coming up here very soon. But really good to be back, guys. Yeah, we are right now in the middle of May, smack dab in the middle of the month of May. It's moving right along really quickly. And I know things are busy on both of your ends. So I appreciate you making the time. Joe, start with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. School's been going all right. I had some homework to do. And no, I'm messing with you guys. I graduated. I'm done with it. You're never going to hear me opening up with that ever again. Yeah, I mean, for me, since the last time we streamed last Wednesday, not much other than just getting my master's degree. I'm a psychotic person, and I went on a 5K run the following day for some reason. I got absolutely not drunk, but I did get a good tipsy vibe going the night I got my degree.
Good tipsy hustle.
Yeah, these guys got some drunk texts for me and everything. I was drunk texting a lot of people because I was just so happy. Let me tell you something. Sunny D vodka seltzers, not bad. Had about like 4 or 5 of them that night, and they were really good. Very sugary, so if you're ready for that, they have a bit of a sugar taste to them, or just sweetness, I should say. But other than that, it's just been the only thing that's been busy right now is work. If you haven't noticed, I've kind of fully now rebranded Sleepless with Steve. Not like a whole new name and everything, but we were overdue for a new look. From the please stand by screen to the intermission screen, which you'll see, and the ending screen. And even right now, the hosting screen. I mean, things have changed. Dom has a different Instagram handle. Letterbox became an app that Steve and I religiously use, so I figured to throw that on there too. And it was just we just need some new color, and so I decided to go with blue. Blue just kind of attracted me, and that's kind of what I've been doing lately is just thinking of cool ideas.
I can relate.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's Dom's polo. Just over the years, just subliminally has been making me want to do more blue stuff. So yeah, that's what I've been doing lately. Is just getting that degree, running, and kind of updating the look of the show. And I will probably continue to play around with it some more. And there's even Dom and I have been trying to work this out for years, but I was just so busy with school. And Dom, who will still be busy with events, because I'm sure he's going to talk about it. He was just talking about it in the green room. Both of us were just so busy on different schedules. We never had time to figure out a different way to not use Zoom and just use a different way to communicate with one another, where we don't have to take the sponsored and Zoom sponsored intermission. But enough about me. I've been talking for a while. I want to pass it off to Dom.
Yeah, like I said, it's getting very busy, but that's a-okay because honestly, I'm getting to enjoy life a little bit more. I cooked for myself for the first time. Not for the first time, but I cooked chicken breast for the first time. And I live streamed it on Instagram because not because I was trying to be entertaining, because I need to do this and not cop out and order food somewhere. So I'm just gonna.
I saw it pop up, and
put it
I'm
on Instagram.
I wonder what he's doing. I should tune in. And
I watched it for a couple of minutes.
I think the title. What did I put for the title? It was I've never cooked chicken breast.
I've never made chicken breast.
Yeah, exactly. And then what wound up happening is people just started to join.
Yeah.
You can share Instagram live streams. It's people can join in and start streaming with you. And they were just giving me real time the recipe changed as people were giving me advice. So I'm okay, I guess we're doing this now. I don't know. You guys are the experts, but it was good. Cooking it's interesting. It's a lot, but it tastes good. And now I have 4 meals after yesterday. So it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. And I'm sure there are other highlights that I'm completely forgetting right now. But the important thing is that we finally get to talk about a movie that I've been so excited to talk about for quite a bit.
Yeah, you were fortunate enough to see this one in theaters, unlike both of us who had to watch it on Shudder. It never came out here.
Out of all the movies, though, to catch at home, this one works very well because you can watch it because like any analog horror, it works best when you're by yourself and it's super dark in your room or at your couch. Wherever you're watching it, and it has an effect on you.
Yeah, Catherine and I did it up, though. She put a sheet over the blinds because we watched it when it was still a little light out and stuff like that. We got projector lights around the TV and everything. Now, we made this thing an event because, like you said, this movie's very much cut from the same cloth as analog horror. Dom and I have kind of passingly talked about it on the show in the past. We're big Local 58 fans. And that was one I just kind of stumbled upon. And somebody actually read my review of Late Night with the Devil recently, and they commented on it. They're like, it's so cool to meet a Local 58 fan. And then I just replied, infants and pets are smallest patriots.
Classic line.
Yeah,
absolutely classic line.
Oh, if it is, I think you could call it a short film. Contingency is one of the best short films I can think of recent time. Phenomenally haunting. Definitely something to play when you can't fall asleep. But anyway, so this movie, though, Late Night with the Devil, this is a concept horror film, essentially, by the work of by Australian brothers, Colin and Cameron Carnes. And essentially what it is, though, is it converges sort of documentary filmmaking with found footage. Because what we are watching is basically the work print of a broadcast of a show called Night Owls with Jack Delroy. Jack Delroy is played by David Demalchian. Demulchin. That's how you say. I always want to
All
say.
night. We're
I always
gonna
want
get
to
this
say
right.
Desmalchian. Desmalchin is, I believe, how you say his.
Dalsmalchian is how I always said it. So now that
I always said
I'm screwed
Desmalchian.
for the rest of the night.
Desmalchin. David Desmalchin. He plays Jack Delroy, and he's a very like unctuous host. That's how I described him in my review at stevepulaski.com. And he's the host of this Night Owls program. And what you're watching, though, is essentially this episode that aired on Halloween night that brought together sort of a litany of different guests. You have a psychic, you have a contrarian former magician turned like career skeptic. He almost kind of plays like a more arrogant Penn Jillette in a way. And then you have a psychiatrist, Dr. Ross Mitchell, played by Laura Gordon, along with the subject of her work, played by Ingrid Torelli, in a fucking fantastic performance by her. And they bring both of these individuals on. And the girl, Ingrid Torelli's girl, she's like a teen girl. She's the lone survivor of a satanic church's mass suicide. And she's afflicted by this demon she calls Mr. Wriggles. And essentially, Delroy becomes fascinated and wants to do like a sort of like an exorcism live on TV, because this is a live show. Now, the movie, how the movie's structured is the first 8 minutes of it or so, 8 to 10 minutes, gives us a background on Jack Delroy, who always was like number 2 to Johnny Carson for shows that air during the witching hour. And it plays sort of this clip show thing. It also talks about how he basically always competed with Carson. He was connected with this weird men only club known as the Grove, which is kind of I think a reworking of the Bohemian Grove, which is very famous in that regard too. And his wife passed away of cancer. And after a sabbatical, he's come back. It's sweeps week, it's ratings week. So this is what he's trying to do to boast the ratings of his show. That's sort of the broad overview. I feel like you have to get into some of the nitty gritty with this movie in order to really discuss it and appreciate it. And what you're watching too is like the work print version of the show. So during the commercial breaks, where the commercials would normally be, you're getting like camera footage of behind the scenes interactions with Delroy, the producers, the showrunners, and the guests. And I'm just going to start by saying too, like, this is an extremely well done piece of work. It's fully committed to the bit. It's really... It plays a lot like, I don't know if you guys have seen this. Martin Scorsese's the King of Comedy. It plays a lot like that because and you can clearly tell that this Malchin had a lot of inspiration from Rupert Pupkin, who is played by Robert De Niro in that movie. There's a lot of inspiration there. He's got the same sort of like cross between smarmy yet like unctuous vibe to him. And what you get then too is a really deliciously like decorated set too. That sort of adds to the claustrophobia of television and gives you sort of an unhinged look at like sort of how like these demons are possessing this girl and sort of unfolding in real time. There's so much to talk about with this movie. I don't want to hog the oxygen. I'll pass it off to you, Dom, because you've been the one sitting on this for the longest since you saw this movie before we did.
There's something about the 70s that feels like the most horror to me. Something about that decade, than the feel of it. I'm sure, obviously, a lot of famous slasher films have that effect, but also with the Satanic Panic, with so much going on with cults and what have you. It's such an interesting decade to place horror, and I would even say the 70s is like a better horror decade than the 80s. Not by movie output, just by setting somewhere, and then but for me, that setting along with the combined analog like broadcast angle is just such this movie speaks to me in so many goddamn ways. And I've always been interested, of course, in analog horror, which we'll talk even more about. But for me, it's like stuff like that Max Headroom hijacking, signal hijacking. That stuff is classic. That stuff, honestly, when I first heard about it, it was so I thought it was funny, and it was funny to talk about, and it's funny to talk about now. But when you actually like sit down, it's on YouTube. If you watch it, you just front to back, it's actually really, really creepy. Because it
For
ends
those
with
unaware, not to cut you off, it's the
yeah,
Max Headroom broadcast signal intrusion that overtook WGN and WTTW.
yeah. I think that was the 80s. I forget exactly when it happened, what year it happened.
88, I want to say.
80, yeah, okay, so it was an 80s thing, but regardless, uh the what Late Night with the Devil does so well is balance the kind of bold um as like techniques that can be done from the best of analog horror, which let me state, the internet, I don't think they invented it. You can go back as far as Blair Witch, and I think in the preceding years as well there were some other, I've actually I've not seen them, but there's some other ones where it's like, hey, we're doing like an exorcism in this house. There's like something ghost something in the early 2000s. I have not seen that one, but regardless, what analog horror did in the late 2000s and 2010s was take what the internet audience knew was the format of how they, because they knew their computers very well. In that same vein, Late Night with the Devil knows its audience, or at least trusts its audience to know how this TV show goes, how late night a TV show goes, and how things can be happening behind the scenes. And in that respect, it does balance things very, very well. It doesn't get too esoteric, but it does take some bolder things like that documentary that takes place in the middle and the beginning. It's like, oh, when we cut to behind the scenes, okay, we don't need to explain this too hard. You can tell that it's the angles are different, the feel is different, everyone's acting different, it's black and white. And in that sense, this isn't high cinema, but it's definitely a cut above maybe like a more mainstream horror offering. And in that sense, it's very, very fulfilling for me. It's coming full circle. And same with so much of what you were saying, Steve. But for me, I think it's just the feel of it is the strongest part, right? That aesthetic is like a character in and of itself, and it pays off in spades here. But that's just the general feel for it. Absolutely loving it, and I'll hand it off to our new MPA.
Possessed white girl, shit talking devil, floating around, and in that same room when they're floating around, weird shit is happening. They did it better than the actual exorcism franchise that's going on right now.
Oh shit! No, that's not even
Not
that's
even
just
a hot
self-evident.
take.
Yeah.
No, it's really not a hot take. I hate to keep bringing that movie up, but that movie pissed me off, man. This movie, a lot of people nowadays complain about, oh, there's nothing original out there and everything. And I could point to a bunch of movies that I'm like, no, there is. Go see these movies. Go see these movies. But there's one genre I know a lot of people say there's nothing original in that genre anymore. It's just the same old stuff. And I think it's stupid because I still think there is original stuff. It is horror. A lot of people always just assume, oh, it's just the same slasher stuff. It's just the same monster stuff. But Late Night with the Devil might actually be, and I've said this about other horror films. Like Pearl to me, I'm like, no, this is like a very original idea for a horror film. I think like the idea of it, yeah, it is a slasher movie. Same with X, but I think how it's executed is very original. So many other ones I could point at because we are in a golden age of horror. But Late Night with the Devil is definitely something I sat there and when it ended, I went, yeah, I don't think there's anything else I can think that's like this really. I mean, maybe yeah, the king of comedy, like Steve said. Maybe if you want to get really like out there, Network. If you want to like stretch it that far, but truly in the horror genre, this is something completely unique. And yeah, while it does deal with possession, how it basically handles the whole exorcist demon possessing little girl type of thing, how it handles all that is so refreshing that it feels original all over again. Like I'm discovering a little girl getting possessed by the devil again, and all this creepy stuff happening for the first time. Like, I'm back in actual 1977 watching The Exorcist for the very first time in theaters. I didn't get to see this movie in theaters, like Dom pointed out. I watched this at home with the lights off by myself. And it was one of the most unsettling experiences I had watching a movie alone. This was more unsettling, and I know a lot of people were talking about this movie in terms of horror, but Skinamarink, where I watched that in a theater and everything, and it is a bit unnerving at times, Skinamarink, but it's nothing like this. There is something that from the first moment that something goes bad with the broadcast. And people are, it's live TV, so they're just rolling with it. They're just like, hey, it's live TV. That's the nature of the beast. We're just going to keep going with it. On to the next thing. Word from a sponsor. And it's like, well, everyone else is acting like it's fine. Makeup crew is still doing their thing. Jack is doing his thing. His buddy Gus is still telling jokes. I guess everything is okay. I mean, I don't know. That guy's eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he's coughing a lot. But, yeah, the show must go on, as they must say. And as each commercial break happens, I got more and more scared about what the hell they were going to come back to after commercial break. I was like, what the hell's going to happen on this broadcast next? And why hasn't someone stepped in and said, that's it, we're done? Well, one person tries to, but of course, Jack, being in the hunt for ratings and viewership, doesn't want to stop, along with his producer as well. This film, it blew me away. Like, I hate to say, like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh man, every week Joe sounds like he's been blown away by a movie, but no, this year alone, I mean, there were 3 movies so far that I went, damn, like, we were starting off this year on a very bad note for me. Madam Web, Argyle, One Love, to name a few. That kick-started the year, and I was like, shit, I don't know about 2023 anymore. The longer I should have known, like, we still got plenty more of the year to go. And the longer the year has gone on so far, and we're almost halfway through the year. We're almost in June, and Furiosa is just around the corner, and so many other great movies too. I'm sitting here, I'm going, I cannot wait to talk about Late Night with the Devil, though, because this is another movie that I'm gonna throw up there, and it's probably gonna be on my best of list. I don't know why I'm saying probably. It is going to be on my best of list. Now, whether it stays in that top 5 if the year continues to be this good, that is up to what else is released. Otherwise, you sure as shit can believe you will see this in my top 10. I doubt it'll be knocked off of there. Because I guarantee you this is something I'm going to throw on come Halloween, because not only is this one of my favorite films this year, it's also becoming a favorite Halloween classic of mine, to where I went back last night before we did the show and everything. I was like, there's just a few shots I want to look at again, because this just screams Halloween time. And yeah, it does help that the episode that they're airing in the show is set on Halloween night, but just everything else about the vibes of this is it just screams like a perfect Halloween movie to throw on in the background of a party for someone just to come in, sit down for a few minutes with whatever they just made a plate of, watch it for a bit, and just be like, damn, this is really good, and then continue on with their night and everything. Yeah, I had a blast with this movie.
Very well said. And you keep referencing, to go back to what you said in the beginning, you keep referencing The Exorcist Believer as like a movie that really pissed you off. And I mentioned it in the beginning of the show, and I might use it as my reference now for when a horror movie really blows me away, as a polar opposite example, but the movie Tarot. And one of the reasons too, like, I almost feel like when I was writing the review of that movie, every now and then I feel like I get really mean. I get like really mean. And one of the characters in Tarot is Jacob Batalon from the Spider-Man movies,
yeah.
the most recent ones. And he, like, that guy needs a more dramatic role, because they played to his worst strengths in this thing. So I felt like he takes the cake probably for the most annoying character this year, and maybe next year too already. But be that as it may, though, I felt like I was getting mean when I was talking about this movie. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, I wonder if this might have been a 2-star movie for me 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. But the fact of the matter is, though, and horror has seen this more than any other genre in recent time, because horror, like, comedy has its eras, but I think horror has its more pronounced eras. Like, you have the slasher era, you have sort of the You have sort of like the gore torture porn era. Now this, I feel like we're in the elevated era. We're in like the
Mhm.
everything is grief era, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term. But horror has more decisive eras in it than I think other genres. And when I was writing my review of Tarot, though, I kept thinking like, no, you know why? You know what? Part of the reason that this movie sucks as hard as it does, and it does very little well, but externally speaking, this movie sucks hard because the standard has been raised.
Yeah.
The standard for the genre has been raised.
Within these
This is
last few
some
years alone.
Yes, within just even the last 5 years, if you want to look at it like this. This is some like 2014 Ouija level shit
Yeah.
Hmm.
that does that this PG-13 cop out can't even really see what's going on breed of horror movie that the culture has moved on from even too. It's not doing that well in theaters. And that's what got me thinking too, like, especially seeing it just a couple of weeks after Late Night with the Devil. And it's not like you have to even go that far back to look at great horror movies too. I mean, you can, if you're a Jordan Peele fan, you got that Barbarian we talked about, The Menu. There's so many great horror movies recently, even movies that have horror undertones like Beau is Afraid.
And might I say too, like, this movie isn't necessarily like your typical horror movie scares. Like, I don't want people to think like there's like jump scares throughout this or anything. But holy shit, I mean, you are tense the entire time. You are scared sitting there because you feel like you're trapped in the studio audience watching this play out, and you have nothing else to do but just sit there and watch like the horror literally unfold in front of you.
You're really at the mercy of this movie, and it's a symphony of aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's a symphony of aesthetics that add to the atmosphere, and that's really what I found myself gushing about with this movie is the production design,
Yeah.
the craft that went into this too. Stephanie Hook's costumes, Othello Stoffel's production design too, Riz Oteri. There's the score too. Before we cut to break, I'll mention this. There's a twofold score happening here with this movie. There's the external score, what is that, non-diegetic, the music that plays to enhance the movie, the non-diegetic, the music the characters can't hear in the movie is what I'm trying to get at. Roscoe James Irwin and Glenn Richards handle that, but the in-house band is conducted by Riz Oteri. And so there's in-house music too, like traditional late night shows, and it's sublime. It converges beautifully. It evokes the era. There's heavy horns. There's like these jazzy compositions, which I know a certain one of us over here who runs a jazz blog certainly appreciated. It captures the era in such a divine way that it deserves praise for that. The scares are effective, but the ambiance is what cultivates those scares too.
And another thing too, and this is something that's been happening lately with the genre itself. You go back and you look at all those movies that were trying to ride off, Ouija, The Conjuring, all those movies where it was like, like, hey, like horror is kind of making this blockbuster like appearance, but now lately horror is like, both a blockbuster, but like, is actually becoming more like, elevated, becoming bigger art form for some studios like A24. This movie is up there with those in terms of performances as well. Everybody in this movie is so damn good. Daniel, please help me out here. Desmachin?
David Demalchin.
Oh, not Daniel. Oh my God, David. Yeah, thank you. His performance. Didi. There we go. Yeah, homeboy Didi. His performance as Jack Delroy is probably my favorite performance of his because he didn't have. Because here's the thing, I've seen this man just act like a weirdo in so many films, from the Suicide Squad to the Ant-Man movies to like a bunch of other stuff too. The recent Stephen King movie, The Boogeyman.
Yep.
Where he was in that, and like he was kind of a weirdo in that movie too. It was nice to actually see him like do some dramatic chops here, and he's so damn good. He is believable as a late night host, so much so that like if this was a real late night show set in the 70s, I would love to watch reruns of it because he's just that charismatic on screen. And just like seeing some of the earlier clips in the like fake documentary they have at the beginning, maybe just go like, damn, like this actually would have been like something I would tune in for. And I just actually love the name of it, Night Owls. I'll pass it off to Dom before we go off to intermission. Or maybe we should go to intermission, but I would love to talk.
We'll go to intermission.
Yeah.
I got one more point to make as to why this movie is a cut above so many others, and then we can give our final thoughts.
I'll take us into intermission just by saying this, that David DeMalchin did study at DePaul University, so by that definition we can claim him. And we can also claim him because of the fact too that he shouts out Svengoolie in the movie too,
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
an
man.
indirect reference, referencing his parents watching from, and the way he says it. He says, "Give a big shout out to my mom and dad watching in Berwyn, Illinois." Just the way he put a little zest on it. And I admire that deeply. We'll come back in a couple of minutes after our Zoom sponsored intermission with Dom's continuing point and our discussion on Late Night with the Devil. Don't go anywhere. Back on Sleepless with Steve. And I love football, though. I find it incredibly fascinating. I find it simultaneously simple but complex. The business of football, though, is a very different beast. And it's something that when you start diving into, it really shows you what runs this country, what runs the academic programs of this country, whether it be the University of Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, LSU, the big collegiate powerhouses that we have in this country. Football not only runs these schools, but supplements every other sports program at major D1 Division I college athletics. Football is the bankroll. It's the reason you have a women's basketball team. It's the reason these colleges have lacrosse teams and tennis teams and badminton teams. It's the reason for it, because football is a fucking cash cow in this country. And there probably hasn't been, and if there is, I don't want to make this a blanket statement because I haven't seen it. I've admittedly lacked on documentaries in recent time, but there might not be a better, there admittedly might not be a better documentary to show that fact than BS High, which is currently streaming on Max, directed by Martin Desmond Rowe and Trevon Free. I want to give these two dudes names. I want to give them name drops, and I want to name drop them a couple times because, man, these are some good directors. I find documentaries to be, and I've been reviewing documentaries since I started reviewing movies back in 2009. I find documentaries the hardest types of movies to review because of the fact that it's like, am I interested? Do I love the story or do I love the movie? Or do I love the idea and the themes that the story brings on? Or do I love the approach? And it's something that I wrestle with constantly when I watch documentaries, because I feel like it's tough. As somebody like me who has a lot of different vested interests, I can go from talking to you about ringtone rap of 2007 to Ren and Stimpy and its problematic creator in the 1990s to country music of the 1950s, all of which topics on documentaries I've watched. I find documentaries the toughest to review because of the fact that I wrestle with the fact, am I interested in the story and the subject, or do I love the way it was approached? And I love both when it comes to BS High. I think this is a terrific documentary about a slimy piece of shit person. And also, too, a really deceptively intricate scam at the same time that it wasn't a deceptively intricate scam. The movie focuses on the Bishop Sycamore High School scandal. Now, I remember when this game aired on ESPN. I want to give a little background here. I remember when this game aired on ESPN. I didn't watch it, but I remember seeing it on TV. It was Bishop Sycamore High School versus IMG Academy. I remember seeing that game air on TV. It was 2021. It was in late summer. I want to say August. August of 2021. I remember seeing it, and I remember seeing Bishop Sycamore trending on Twitter, and I'm like, what is this? And I remember like scrolling through, and I'm like, there's some high school playing on ESPN. And at the time, you got to think of the context. This was about a year and a half after COVID, or year and a half during COVID, if you want to think of it that way. And I remember looking at it and thinking like, God, ESPN must be pressed for programming. They're airing a high school, matchup on their premiere network. But the film follows Bishop Sycamore High School, a fake high school in Ohio, and largely centers around Roy Johnson, the head coach of Bishop Sycamore High School. Bishop Sycamore Centurions, as they're known. And it basically talks about how this fictitious high school and this completely falsified athletic program, specifically the football, obviously, the football program was allowed to pass as a football program in the state of Ohio. And it is royally fascinating. It has this very intricate sort of device that it uses where it incorporates Rowan Free, the directors of the movie, into interviewing Roy Johnson, because as far as the talking heads are concerned, he probably takes up most of the movie. And it lets him try and tell the story of how and why this fictitious high school came to be, why he was recruiting these left out players, or these left out post high school kids that were in their late teens, early 20s to play the game of football. And how he basically used these kids as a way of financial gain in completely poor fashion, I might add. There is so much to unpack. I have to give credit to Joe, too, because Joe
Back
is
and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube brought to my attention. It's amazing what the man can do when he actually has time to breathe and be creative as opposed to stress about school. Want to give more love to Joe for this fabulous little bit of a basically rebranding of Sleepless with Steve here. Not in name, but just in visuals. You really upgraded the look and feel of this show, and you see that right there in the intermission. During the intermission, it will pull a random clip of Sleepless with Steve and play that during the intermission. So sometimes when we go a little bit longer in intermission, maybe 5 minutes or so, you're treated to some content in the past. So I want to say outstanding work, man. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention because that just looks exemplary.
Thank you. It came like the whole idea of it. I was just sitting there. I'm like, there was one time we had technical issues and like we went to the intermission screen. We were gone for 5 minutes. And I was just thinking, I'm like, man, if we ever actually do gain viewership over the years, maybe like, whatever happens, like, stuff just explodes. I'm like, I wanted at least like something there to entertain somebody. So that was like the whole idea of it. I just drew it up in my head. I was like, kind of just like playing around with my photo editing thing. Sometimes I even use PowerPoint, and I was just like, boom, I got it. This is going to be it.
Looks stellar, man. Outstanding job.
Thanks.
Yeah, man.
We're going back to talking about Late Night with the Devil, a new horror movie now streaming on Shudder following its theatrical release. And Dom was going to lead us. You had another point you wanted to bring up about this movie. I'm all ears.
Yes. First of all, the mockumentary I was referencing was a BBC 1992 mockumentary called Ghost Watch. Okay. It's a decade even before I thought it was released. But yeah, I'd be interested to watch that at some point. But in 2017, when Jordan Peele released Get Out, spoilers for a movie that's almost a decade old now, at the end of that movie, it completely subverted the expectation, the traditional horror movie trope of, hey, this is the police sirens, and this is supposed to make you feel safe in every single horror movie, but in this movie, that is the complete opposite effect. That is doom and gloom happening, and it's a complete flip on flipping that mechanic on its head. And that was such a revelatory moment for me, such a beautiful moment, and something that Late Night with the Devil does, maybe not on that level, but something that it does really, really well. That sold. I was already loving this movie, but really sold it and imprinted it into my heart is that, hey, because actually, I'm not going to say because I think everyone deserves to watch it. Anyone that may be watching this, even if it's one person, you deserve to watch it. But it does that same thing in such a unique way that analog horror can really only do. And it was like, hey, this is something that makes me feel safe, or something that's like, okay, here we are. And then when hey, this thing is falling apart. That was really, really, really cool. It's like, okay, I feel very unsettled, and it's very clear why. Mm-hmm. And that was really damn clever. And it's not the first time they've done that before. I'm sure a bunch of YouTube videos have done it, but within the context of this story, it's fantastic. And that's when I knew shit was hitting the fan. And yeah, 100%. Yeah.
It reminds me so much of Midsummer in that way, where it's like Midsummer's a horror movie that's set during the daylight. Like, it's just like, and daylight usually in horror movies, you're usually fine. Nothing crazy is going to happen. And the entire time in that movie, shit is also hitting the fan. In this movie, you're in a studio audience, like Dom has brought up, and all of us have, and it's everything you've seen on late night TV. You got a band playing, you got a guy doing jokes on the side, you have the host being charismatic. So you're supposed to have like your guard down, but as the movie goes on, you're just like, nah, something is not right here. There's something going on. Please, somebody just say something. I know I'm not going crazy. I shit you not too. While watching this movie, I was seeing stuff on the screen, and I don't know if it's because I was watching it in the dark, and I was just so invested. I swear I saw like ghostly figures in the background throughout the movie, and I was like rewinding it after the movie was over. I'm like, oh man, did I actually see that? And then like when I went back to that specific scene, nothing was there, and I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. Maybe this movie is actually messing with me.
Yeah, that's how that happens. That's classic analog horror
really,
shit right there.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, this movie's a marvel. The only criticism I levy against it, I was very close to making this a 4-star movie. Was very close to it. The thing about it, though, that stops it for me is that I think the climax of the movie comes very close to sort of undoing much of what made it work up until that point. Because essentially, they pull the Carnes brothers. They pull the old trick of breaking down our perception of reality in the final minutes, which doesn't make sense given what we're watching. We're watching the original print of the episode allegedly filmed and aired in 1977.
Yeah.
And I like how it ends. I will say that is that
like the last 3 seconds.
The last frame.
Yeah.
The last frame of it. The last
But what
shot.
happens before the sequence before that? You
But
weren't
the sequence before,
you thought that was a mistake.
I think that I know
like
why
strategically,
they did it. I know why they did it, and it does, and it works in the sense that it gives you the shock. The credits roll with your mouth open. Like, I understand why they did it, and I think the effect does work, but it disrupts the concept. Is my beef with it? Is that it breaks down our reality then when what we're watching is the print of the episode.
I actually completely see your point, but I would counter that rules work, but when you break them for a good reason, and I thought it was a good enough reason to break them in that moment. And I think how they did it, it was very clear to me what they were doing, and that was very effective for me. So yeah, go ahead, Joe.
No, sorry. I didn't mean like raise my hand or anything. I was just dribbling my pen. Steve, I do feel similar to you about that criticism. I let it slide slightly. It didn't bother me too much because the payoff of that was really good. And I was like, okay, well, it ended on a very strong note, so I can forgive it. The thing that actually was taking me out of the movie, and I'm wondering if you guys felt the same, and I'm guessing you guys didn't because Steve didn't bring it up. Dom, I think you're cool with it too. I actually wasn't too crazy about the behind-the-scenes footage part.
Yes. Okay. I think we're on the same page. We're on the same page.
Because it's framed... It's being told to us by Sam Fisher. It's being told to us that it's behind the scenes footage never released before. It's found footage and everything, and it's in black and white, and that's fine. But it cuts to different cameras at multiple times, and I'm just kind of like that. It just doesn't seem natural. It doesn't seem like actual.
Why is there a camera following them?
Yeah, and none of
that's my question. That sounds like a nitpick, but the whole point of this analog horror concept is that that's the format. That's very, very crucial. So that, yeah, I'm with you on that.
I would have been. I really would. I mean, you would have to then add another explanation to it, but I would have been cool if it would have been cool if one of the Dr. June, I believe her name is, right?
Yes, the handler for the
is if she had like a crew following her, like a documentary crew, and they were shooting the behind the scenes stuff separate from UBC, the network that this show is running on. They were just like, hey, like, we got permission, we can shoot stuff like happening like behind the scenes here and everything, and like, you just have them like, out of frame.
Just needed a quick throwaway line to do that,
something like that, and then I can forgive. It's like, okay, that's why there's multiple camera angles, because maybe there's 2 camera guys trying to like, be like, hey, we're making this for Dr. June. This is kind of like, her thing that she's paying for on the side, something like that. But like, if you don't have an explanation, that's fine. It just sometimes took me out because it went from being like, oh my god, I'm so like locked in and zoned in because I truly do feel like this is a real episode of TV someone can find on archive.org. And then this happens, and I'm like, okay, now I'm in a movie now. Like, it just kind of broke my reality a bit. And the ending almost did that, but its payoff is so good that I was like, okay, I can forgive that at least.
Two things, either that where they have a throwaway line and they can explain it the way, or two, they go bold. They go bold and be like, hey, one of the main cameras was just tilted down and it just shows like their legs. And then you hear like, we got the audio. Yeah. We got the audio, but this is the closest thing we could match we could pair with that audio.
Just, like,
so all you're getting is just their
makeup touch-ups and everything. Yeah. You just see Jack and the producer like shadows or just like, you know, get creative with the set, and like you see like a mirror and you can see their conversation from the mirror. But again, I mean, this movie was already low budget enough as is, and what they did with that budget is amazing. So I'm not going to downplay that.
But like low budget is the engine for creativity in many cases. Let me say, Steven, I'll let you talk. Is that this, like I was saying, this movie really straddled the line between how much can we trust our audience and how much do we have to make it adaptable to the mainstream. Sure. That's the key here, because maximum like niche YouTube analog horror, you can like, hey, here's like literally 97 minutes of just a still shot while we fuck with the audio. That's literally what some analog horror will do, and I appreciate that, because literally nowhere else in the annals of human creativity will you really find something like that.
Yes.
Is that the best choice? Probably not, but they did it. You can do it and see see what happens. This is a very niche movie to begin with. I don't think anyone's heard of this movie. Well, outside of the internet, of course, but you know, you talk to someone in your office, and no one's probably heard of this movie. And in that sense, in the mainstream, it's really straddling that line. And Steve, I'll say, like, it had to go mainstream in that sense, and I agree with that choice. Joe, it did not, or it did go mainstream in that choice, and I kind of disagree with it. So it's like a point by point, pace by you know, like director's choice by director's choice. And there's one choice with AI. I don't know how much you want to talk about that that they did make, and it's like, yeah, that was an error. But regardless, it were some choices here, and it's so interesting what they did. Yeah. What they did.
No, I completely agree. I don't think anything is strong enough to derail this thing, but I do see your point, Joe. I hadn't really considered, because you know what? I kind of felt thinking back, I kind of felt myself during those behind the scenes moments, like sort of the impatient viewer watching commercials, waiting for the show to start again. You know what I mean? Catherine's idea was that they should have done like a fake commercial or two, like a Grindhouse style thing, which I think would have been amusing as hell. You know, it probably would have been more believable than having like you said, like these cameras following, because it is, if you think about it too hard, it's like, why would the cameras be following these people behind the scenes?
Yeah. Especially like, you know, they literally
I also like your idea too.
They literally drop like a character's dead. And it's like, well, no one's supposed to know about that, but they got a camera in their face like this, and it's just like,
yeah,
it's true. And it's not like, and obviously the time that this movie takes place, it's not like cell phone cameras or anything. Yeah. They got the big like brownie cameras, for lack of a better term,
on wheels,
you know, in the faces of these characters. Yeah, exactly. They know damn well that they're talking in front of a camera. But no, very, very, very well said. Well said there. There's so much to like about this movie, though. This movie builds up, and I think that's a testament to how strong this movie is written by Colin and Cameron Carnes, too, is that this movie builds up so much equity with you as it goes on, that like it can weather its own sort of minor misgivings, and you can find ways to justify them. It would have been worse had the behind the scenes footage been totally, you know, irrelevant or just needless or anything, but it does do its part to keep the tension moving too. So I won't fault it for that. There's so much to like about this movie. If the year ended today, it would probably be my number one pick so far. It would probably be my number one pick of the year. I liked it that much. It's a strong 3.5 out of 4 stars for me. Late Night with the Devil. We'll go Joe, then Dom to send us home on this one.
Yeah, no, for me, performances across the board were amazing in this. That girl that played Lily, oh my god, man, her eyes creep me the hell out throughout every like shot of the movie, where it's like someone's talking directly to her and like, you know, the person's over here and she's just looking at you like this, and she just has the perfect like big eyes to help sell that. to the like actual possession scene and how that's all done. It was just it's so well done that like yeah, even the gripes I do have with it, they don't really knock it down too much, man. It potentially I am going to watch this again around Halloween time, like I said, and it could potentially become that 4-star movie. Right now it is also 3.5 out of 4 stars with me, but I mean it is like that star has like the outline, it just hasn't been filled in yet for me. It's like how it is right now, and it might get filled in by the end of the year because I recently rewatched Snack Shack, and that went up like a whole half star higher for me after rewatching it because like I gained a new appreciation for it. I found more stuff the second time around, and I feel like with Late Night with the Devil, especially that ending, I probably will pick up so much more stuff on a second viewing that I'll be like, you know what, 4 stars. So I can't wait to watch this again.
Very well said. Dom, send us home.
So inevitably, I actually am going to give this 4 stars. That's 4-star movie. Late Night with the Devil, everyone. Thanks for watching. Sleepless with Steve. No, I'm kidding. No, dude, this is absolutely a 4-star movie in my heart. Those critiques, I'm like, yeah, those are all legit. I've heard a critique where it's like, hey, this movie just felt like a stage play to me. And
That's
you know
not a
what?
bad thing.
I don't think that's a bad thing. Like that absolute like that's a very valid observation, but I don't think I take that as a critique. I absolutely was fucking with that. If anything, it made it better.
Yeah.
No, man. Analog horror has absolutely, we've said it that term a billion times, and I'll say it a billion more. It's come home to roost here in the mainstream, as close to the mainstream as it can get. This was an absolute, like, this is very, very me coded, this movie. And like Joe was saying, come Halloween, I actually might bust this out. This is like,
I want to own this movie.
is,
like I really do.
yeah.
I do
This
too.
is like what's that movie? We all go to the World's Fair, or like we don't go to the World's Fair.
We're all
Yes.
going to the World's
We're
Fair.
all going to the World's Fair. That's like what that movie was for me, but it was like I can enjoy Late Night with the Devil a little bit more because it's got that 70s. It's set in New York, but it has so much of that like analog Chicago vibe to it, late night Chicago vibe to it that I can actually enjoy that while also getting the thrills and the fun of it and find new details with it. Yeah, easy 4 stars for me.
Really good stuff. Really good review tonight of Late Night with the Devil. Appreciate you guys letting me selfishly push this one back to this week so we could talk about it. So I dearly appreciate that. We are going to dive in now to this. I might let Joe, if you don't mind, leading the discussion on this one. For the streaming era as it continues to evolve or devolve, as we could say too. This story has emerged from a Q1 earnings call from Warner Brothers Discovery from our good friend and dear contributor to Sleepless, dear secondhand contributor David Zaslav, about how Disney Plus, Max, and Hulu will be doing a 3-way bundle starting this summer, which is emblematic of quote-unquote restructuring of how people view content, which is so modern and so unlikable in the way that that's just said. But Zaslav noted that while the pricing hasn't been announced yet, it will be priced very attractively for consumers. And he also adds that it does feel like this is a moment in terms of what's the next year, 2 years will bring. And I'll have you lead the discussion on this, Joe. I want to see where you take this to and also what you gauge from this as well, too.
So upon reading this, I literally sent to the group chat. I'm like, well, guys, here it is. Cable 2 Electric Boogaloo. Because that's what everybody's been saying about this, is that this whole idea now, and we've recently, where was it? Maybe I didn't send it here in our chat. Maybe I sent it someplace else. But yeah, I sent it someplace else. I wish I could find it. There's also another bundle that's coming out. So while you have Disney Plus, Max, and Hulu in one bundle, Peacock, Apple Plus, and Netflix are going to be the other bundle you can have. So that's your AT&T, and this is your Comcast now. And what you're having here is what everybody was fearing about everybody getting their own apps and then eventually consolidating into apps. When we had CBS All Access, and then MTV had their own thing, and then Comedy Central had their own thing with South Park Studios, and eventually all those started collapsing into one another to eventually make Paramount Plus, and then I mean, you could look at each one of these apps, and like you can kind of like trace the downfall and like where they eventually lead to. I mean, for God's sakes, Disney Plus is eventually just going to become Hulu. We all know that's going to happen. They're slowly making the integration right now, and Hulu is just the more popular app because of the catalog it has. But right now, what we have is the potential of those three, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max, becoming one thing. And like Steve said, there's not a price plan going on right now, but sold separately from Max, Disney Plus and Hulu are a bundle you can get, which I will be subscribing now that I've lost my student privileges and I can't get student Spotify, which gave me free Hulu. So I'm like, well, I guess I might as well subscribe to the Disney Plus Hulu ad tier, which comes with Disney Plus and Hulu with ads for $10 a month. Not bad for $10 a month. Okay, those two, $5 each. Without ads, it's $19.99 a month. I'm like, okay, $10 each of those. I really don't think Disney Plus's catalog is really worth that much for $10 a month. So I'm gonna go with the ad one. But then you get Max, and Max I still think is like one of the best streaming services, despite some of the stuff they've cut and the stupid stuff they've made behind the scenes where they haven't allowed stuff to release or have taken stuff away. That's $16 a month, and it's $10 a month with ads. So while Zaslav can say like, oh, you know, it's going to be priced very attractively for consumers, we know how this works. Netflix used to be priced attractively for consumers. For $7.99 a month, stream all you can want, order movies online. Then for $10 a month, stream all you want. You can't get the DVDs anymore. We're just going to cut that, actually. Okay, for $13 a month, only 4 accounts can be used on the highest tier, and then the lowest tier, only 2 can be used, and it kept going up and up. So we know how this is going to work. It's going to be priced attractively for consumers, just like Disney Plus was. And over the years, it will slowly rise because guess what? There's nothing else out there like it. And while, yes, you have Netflix and Peacock and Apple with their own thing, they're going to eventually do the same thing too. You can't find another Apple TV show on all these other streaming services. You can only find it here. So we're going to keep raising the price up as, you know, we gain more content. We feel that, hey, this bundle is very much more worth it. In fact, I'm interested to know how much that one's going to cost because Netflix is ridiculously expensive already if you're going without the ad tier and like the 4K and everything. And that's the other thing too. Like, if you were to pay for this bundle, like, what are you getting in terms of the streaming quality? And what are the streaming restrictions? Is this the way, like, how they're going to figure out how to, like, you know, limit the households? And I'm saying, like, I'm not saying people are going to be doing that still and everything. Like, I know a lot of people are starting to stop doing that because of what Netflix did. But still, I mean, this is just another way I'm like, how much more, like, control are they going to have over what you can choose? And how much this is another thing, too. When they do this, that takes a lot of server capacity for a bundle. And we don't know if it's all going to be running underneath one server and everything. So how much is going to get cut in order for this bundle to work out? That, like, okay.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Are we going to lose stuff that is on Max? Like, I mean, we already lost Class Action Park, which used to be like one of my favorite documentaries. And so it's like, okay, they basically cut the stuff that got little to no viewership. Now we're going to go to middle to no viewership. Like, it's basically got to be the trending show for like months and months, and then we won't cut it. That's what has me worried here is that if they all combine into one thing and they all funnel into servers together and all in one location for you to stream from, like Disney Plus is with Hulu right now and vice versa, how much more stuff do they have to cut in order to make that, make that work? Sorry, I had a burp there. Make that work with Max's large catalog, and Max already cut so much other stuff. I'll pass it off to you guys. I'm kind of just spitballing from here on out about, like, you know, the worries and, you know, fear I have of this happening. And this is, I mean, we recently just saw this too. I swear I'll pass it off to you guys. Microsoft acquired, like, a bunch of game studios for the Xbox brand.
And then shut a shit ton of them down.
And then shut a shit ton of them down because they were like, oh, we want more studios that can give us games that like, you know, give us awards and stuff. When literally 2 of the studios they shut down got them actual trophies and awards the last year with the games they released. So they acquired all these studios and everything, and it's just going to be the same thing here. They're going to acquire all these shows. They're going to acquire all these productions and everything. And what's to stop them from just being like, well, okay, like, you know, this isn't really worth it, guys, and then just cut it? Like, I don't know. I just have the fear of it.
Real quick, for disclosure, Class Action Park is still on Max.
Oh, okay, good.
It is still on Max. A couple of the movies, just off the top of my head, I remember they cut were An
Or
American
now.
Pickle with Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
There
Wow.
was Charm City Kings. That
Yeah.
was the
Oh,
other
that's
one
a shame.
that we reviewed. And another one was the Not So Late Show with Elmo, was another one I remember them cutting too, which was really cute if you
He
ever
should have
checked it
brought
out.
the devil on. He would have kept the.
Elmo got canceled. And yeah, a whole just Late Night with the Devil, but instead of David Dalmatian, just Elmo.
Real quick, though, I just want to add, and then I'll pass it off to you, Dom. You can, again, send us home with your final thoughts. But the other thing, I did think it was interesting what J.B. Parrott of Warner Brothers Discovery did add in this variety piece. He said, and I quote, "I think what happened in the 2010s as the industry went down in a very dangerous financial path of trying to invest in every type of content in every genre to try and be something for everyone. And at the end of the day, we know where that led us to. We're now getting back to all being great at what we do and swim in the lanes that we were great at." I kind of can agree with that in some ways too, because when all these companies started to make their own streaming platforms in a way, they try to diversify to the point where they just put out so much and not all of it was amazingly good either, and not all of it really had much staying power really either too. So I think that there is some truth in that statement though. Whereas like Apple TV's become known for these very heavy but very entertaining scripted dramas. Disney Plus is obviously the kids and family network. HBO has kind of become, but now it's Max and it's a damn mess, but HBO is commonly associated with very intense high budget dramatic shows and also non-linear comedy shows too. So I think that there is something to say about that these studios went outside of their comfort zone. You can take this however you like though. You can take this in whatever direction you feel.
I mean, just my thought is we've had like a very radical in like the past 5 years, very radical, like thought-provoking questions of like, what are we willing to pay for, right? What is it that we are willing to enjoy while also paying $5 a month? There was that whole like mini controversy of like that Watcher YouTube group. I don't know if you guys saw this, where it's like, hey, we're going to stop making videos on YouTube, these high quality documentaries on YouTube or whatever, that we obviously did for free, or at least through a Patreon. We're still going to keep the Patreon, but now it's going to be on a subscription service, and it's just our shit for $5 a month. And I'm like, damn, that's a high ask. But at the same time, Dropout, formerly College Humor, they're doing effectively the same thing. I don't think with a Patreon though, but everyone seems to love that because it's like they have a very, very good stable of improv actors and good sets and very good delivery on stuff. It's like, damn, this is the former College Humor guys, and now it's like they're actually very successful on their independent, just them subscription service, and yet people seem to like that. Rooster Teeth shut down. That's more of a top-down decision, but they did have their own. Rooster Teeth First, where you could pay for their exclusive stuff and to support them directly, and that didn't apparently seem to work out. Again, more some effing around from Warner Brothers.
Nobody can feasibly support everything either.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I was just talking about this with my friend, where it's like, yeah, I only have like $20 at most to spend on Patreon. After that, I'm on my own, and I've got like 3 different groups that I highly respect, and I think they're doing good work, and that's all I can do. Like, it has to come from somewhere.
I mean, Christ's sake, how much of your paycheck can you allocate towards entertainment at the end of the day, too? Like, you really can't. Why do you think password sharing is as fucking prolific as it is?
How much is a movie theater ticket independently, or like, on its own?
A movie theater ticket. I mean, gas is fucking $4.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard. It's so bad.
And with how
newspapers, obviously everybody wants their money and creative should be compensated and everything, but it's like even nowadays too, more and more newspapers are getting paywalled. You know what I mean? And I'm like, for Christ's sake, it's like, how does anybody keep up with anything anymore? And then you wonder why Twitter's as big as it is.
And with how the box office has been this year, where it's kind of been a roller coaster of, okay, this isn't doing that well, we need to re-release stuff that people want to go see and everything. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, it's like people are like, like you guys are saying, gas is high, this is high, all this is whatnot. It's hard to make someone go, okay, I'm gonna go spend 12, $13 a night to go see a movie. I mean, for fuck's sake, if I didn't have A-list, I wouldn't probably be doing this show, honestly.
It's true.
Yeah, again, what are we willing to pay for? I don't pay for. I think I mean, all my subscription services are. I think it's just Netflix that we pay for as a household.
Yeah.
I think that's it, and that was for a very specific reason. Disney Plus, we like watching The Mandalorian, Andor season 2 at some point. I think we're just gonna wait. It's like, okay, it's last episode aired. We got a full month of Star Wars. That's what we're doing.
Dom,
that's what a lot of people are doing now.
I've done the same. Like, I've cut Netflix, and I only resubscribed to it recently to watch Unfrosted, and then I cut it out again because there's nothing on there for me to watch right now. When stuff comes out,
Amazon's got the leg up. Amazon's got the leg up because they got it's the whole thing is tied to the actual that thing. So if anything, they're probably going to be doing probably the best out of all of them, just because it's a bundled with the bigger Amazon service.
Hulu's got the advantage too of just having a large TV catalog as well as the live TV component. Like, it's just like that. They have a leg up in that way where it's like, man, there's so many TV shows I watch on there, from The Bear, Shogun, all these things. Especially with them having to deal with FX, and FX is like one of the best network televisions like out there right now.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, people are. I'm so curious where this conversation will go in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years, because we're going with ups and downs, and once it consolidates, it's so hard to break apart. Unless it goes bankrupt, and that's asking for trouble. You're asking for like a crash in terms of the entertainment industry, and that has way worse knockoff effects with people losing jobs at a very rapid scale.
Yeah.
So that's not what I'm asking for, of course. So at that point, yeah, what are you willing to pay for? At this point, YouTube is my TV. That's honestly it. I have a computer hooked up to my TV downstairs, the big TV downstairs, big as in it's not a computer monitor. And that's just, I have a keyboard and mouse, and YouTube is my free TV. I'm just literally paying for the internet and the power, and
Twitch,
that's it.
Honestly, like Twitch, like shows,
Twitch,
like Double Toast.
Oh yeah, if you really want live shit, I mean, YouTube does live too, but Twitch is that more traditional one where it's you get that was the first, not first of the market, but a very, very big one, and that one's owned by Amazon. So damn, Amazon's looking real damn good right now. Shit. I guess that's our key takeaway. No. What are we willing to pay for? Who the hell knows? People are just really scraping by with that specifically.
Yeah.
Pirating, I think that's going to make a big comeback. It probably already has. So who the hell knows?
It has.
It has. It certainly has. And like, I think the future.
5 years.
I think the future is going to be a lot of people opting for free trials or month-long subscriptions of something, and then pivoting to something else, or stopping entirely until.
Yeah.
Until something worthwhile comes back on the network.
I don't mind resubscribing to something for like a period of time and then canceling it like the moment I resubscribe, because it's like, all right, look, like for instance, Unfrosted. If we had to buy that on Vudu or rent it, it was probably gonna be like $5-6 anyways. I could pay the $7.99 this month, get Unfrosted out of the way, and it's like, okay, was there anything else on Netflix I wanted to watch this month?
Is there anything I want to go back to?
Yeah, that's
like there's that element as well. Really good stuff tonight, guys. Really good to be back. I'm going to call an audible real quick while I have you for the final minutes of the show. I originally had IFs scheduled. For next week, which I'm still going to see. Me and Catherine are still going to see it tomorrow. But would you guys want to pivot and do Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes?
Oh, yeah. I could give a list of a shit about if. I'm sorry.
We already missed the Fall Guy, and that was on me. I'll be the Fall Guy for that move. So I say we go back and do Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes next week. That sound good?
Good.
Yeah, man.
We will review that next week here on Sleepless with Steve. Good unanimous decision right there. Really nice to be back. I want to thank you guys again for just handling the show really well last week, and I'm looking forward to next week when we talk Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. A lot of stuff coming out this week, too. We have Ifs out this week. The Strangers Chapter 1 is out this week, and then we also have Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse movie, is out this week as well. So there's a ton out this weekend, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes doing pretty well at the box office. I'm a big fan of the recent trilogy, so I'm excited to see where they take this fourth installment. On that note, wrapping up the show, Joe Viso, thanks again for the amazing rebrand. I dearly appreciate it. The show looks better than it ever has. I really appreciate it. It's amazing what you can do when you have free time. That's what I'm going to keep saying. Dom, it's always a pleasure to hear your points and everything like that. Always a pleasure to talk to you and see you too. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.